Hey everyone! So in this video, I want to cover how to sell with friendliness and how to sell possibly even with weakness, because these are characteristics that are considered flaws for any sales process or communication or persuasion. But I want to show you how you can actually use them as weapons and how they have worked for me in the past. So to tell you a little bit about my life story and how I've been throughout my life. I've always been the friendly type, right? I've always had a good education, good parents, good friends, and because of that, I've never felt the burning need to actually do anything. But I've always been a happy person and a friendly person, right? I even suffer from this cognitive bias, which is called naive realism, which is you always see the best in other people, even when they're trying to screw you over, okay? So I've been the type of person that always has good intentions, and if somebody tells me, just hand me 50 bucks or 100 bucks and I'll take care of this for you, I would do it blindly without even thinking twice. So that's where I'm coming from, and where I see a lot of my friends coming from as well. Too happy, and very friendly. So something that I've realized throughout life is that just because you are very friendly, it doesn't mean that you are weak. But some people are going to interpret it this way. And what needs to happen is at some stage in life, you develop personal boundaries where you say, hey, I am friendly, but don't test me because I'm not going to allow this type of abuse or aggression or whatever it is. So this is a lesson that I've learned early on, which is just seeming friendly doesn't mean that you actually are weak, but some people are going to think that and they are going to test you. But this is good because you can make an example out of them and you can catch them unprepared. In any negotiation, if the other side thinks that things are going to be too easy, they're not going to try and use any type of advanced technique. They just think, I'm going to win. And this is very good because if you seem friendly on the outside, but you are actually very shrewd on the inside with good techniques, there is a chance that these people are going to go in, they think that they've already won, and then when they test you, they find out that you are going to retaliate and very heavily in terms of that persuasion. So what I even do in the present is I have this logic of retaliation, which is if someone is fair and they're speaking fairly and they're trying to negotiate in a fair manner, then I treat them in the same way. But if they go in and they think that they're going to abuse me because I'm friendly or because I may even seem weak in their eyes, then I'm going to retaliate and hit them twice as hard. So one key lesson here that I've learned throughout my life is that you don't necessarily need to be weak, but some people are always going to see you as weak. And even if you seem very strong, very hardy, very tough, some people are still going to see you as weak. So it's not a matter of being friendly or not being friendly. It's a matter of some people are always going to respect you and some people are never going to respect you. And you have to develop your own personal boundaries in order to effectively protect yourself against these people. And the best way to do it is right away in an interaction. So if someone goes in and they think you're very happy, very friendly, so they say, hey, we're going to offer minus 20% of the price that we were thinking at the beginning. Immediately, you want to draw a boundary and you want to say, I'm very sorry, but that's not acceptable. The key here is that they associate you being friendly with you being weak. And what you want to show is that there's no association. You are friendly, but you can be tough. Now the question is, if you are too friendly and you don't stand up for yourself, that's another issue. But the key is, just because you are friendly, it doesn't mean that you are weak. It's more of a matter of, like I said, some people will always respect you, some people will never respect you, and you have to effectively protect yourself against those that don't respect you. And one thing that comes in very handy here is anger and frustration. And I'm serious, because what happened was, in my own life journey, I didn't always draw personal boundaries at the beginning. I would let people abuse me, and then I would be very angry at them, and I would do nothing. And this would just continue. But there would be this weird phenomenon, which is that I would be able to draw a boundary on the first time of everything. So people abuse me in my current job, then I go to the new job, I draw a boundary at the beginning, everything is fine, and they respect me. But if for some reason they started disrespecting me again, then I would not draw that boundary. And then in the next position, I would draw the boundary on the first time again. It's almost like I could only protect myself when there was a new season, if you will, or a new part of life. But what happened was that I learned throughout my life to shape that anger and that frustration into those personal boundaries. To say, hey, I'm very sorry, but I don't tolerate this, okay? Let's continue the conversation. Let's continue it in a healthy manner, but I don't tolerate this. It was also a shift, if you will, from thinking in terms of black and white to thinking in shades of gray. What I mean is that At the beginning, I was afraid to leverage the personal boundaries because at the beginning, I thought, hey, either this relationship is in terms of being complete friends or being complete enemies. And if I draw a boundary, it's going to go from one of them to the other extreme. And what I figured out later in life was that you can draw boundaries and still have healthy relationships. For example, with friends and family, that happens a lot, where you say, hey, we're friends, everything is fine, but I have to draw a boundary on this area. Please don't test me in terms of this, but everything else, we're fine. So I had to learn that it's not black and white. You can have a good relationship, but still draw boundaries. And that's where I learned to channel this anger and frustration, instead of unleashing it all at once and exploding, to microdosing it, if you will, in these small personal boundaries. To say, hey, let me unleash a little bit of that frustration and tell this person, I can't do this politely. Let me unleash a little bit of that frustration over there and tell that person, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And that's where I started to kind of split that anger and frustration and lack of patience in terms of these personal boundaries in these small areas all throughout these relationships. Now here's the key, this friendliness and even this weakness, if you will, they can be used to sell better. And the way that I did it was in the following way. When you're too friendly, you probably listen a lot more in terms of what the person's needs are. So you know more about them, you genuinely ask questions because you're genuinely interested. But what happens is that this allows you to obtain information that tougher people, if you will, don't obtain. Because if you see a high-pressure salesman, for example, that goes in and they're like, hey, do you want to buy this? This is what we recommend, yes or no, boom, and they go away. They don't really learn anything about the client, right? They're just trying to push something down their throat. But other people who are more shy, more introverted, more friendly, they are going to genuinely want to build a relationship and ask questions about the other side. So whether it's a personal relationship, trying to recommend a movie to a friend, whether it's a sale, trying to recommend a product or a service to a client, the more that you know about their life, the more that you're going to be able to tune that recommendation to that person. And besides that, you're also going to be more likable, because when you put in the effort and the person sees that you really care, they are going to consider that you have their best interests at heart. And the beautiful thing is that there's this persuasion phenomenon where when you know a lot about the person, when you know a lot of information, and you make a recommendation, even if the recommendation is not tailored, it's going to seem to be because you asked for all that information. So to give you a basic example, and I know I always use this analogy, but a doctor and a patient. If a doctor spends 1 hour or 40 minutes just asking questions, and they prescribe a medication, even if the medication is completely generic, the patient is going to think that it's highly tailored, just because they have that information. So the person assumes that you use all the information possible when you make a recommendation, even if you don't. So this is very interesting, because if you're very friendly or you're even weak in the eyes of tougher people, if you will, I'm using these terms in a very loose manner, what's going to happen is that you obtain a lot more information from the person because you're literally trying to build a relationship. And all that information, that person is going to think that you take it into account when you recommend something. In other words, if you are a friendly salesperson or a friendly persuader, you are going to have a lot more information about the other person, and you are going to be able to recommend something that is very specific to their needs. And even if it's not specific, they are still going to think that it actually is specific. And before closing, another thing which is also very important in terms of friendliness and weakness is you become more credible and you become more authentic. Let me tell you why. There's a persuasion phenomenon called adverse transparency. And adverse transparency works the following way. You reveal something negative about yourself that you didn't need to. And because you do it, the other side thinks that you are more credible. A great example of this are the search engines for flights in terms of the travel companies. So what happens is you have one website which has a comparison chart. And what happens is, in many cases, they show the prices of the competition, including the prices that are lower than that brand. But what happens is that many people remain with that brand, even though there are cheaper ones, because what they think is, hey, if this brand is being transparent and showing me that there are better ones, I'm going to stick to them just because they're credible and they're honest. So not everyone is going to be attracted to this effect. But a lot of people are going to choose this person or this product or service just because they're so honest. And it's another example of why this friendliness or weakness works in your favor. Because if somebody seems too tough, too perfect, they're like puffing their chest and saying, oh, our product has nothing wrong, we're perfect, people are going to know up to a degree that it's not authentic. But if you go in and you say, hey, this is what's good about me, this is what's bad about me, I still think that overall, this is a good proposition. But what do you think? People are going to be very attracted to that because it's so authentic and so refreshing. So that's another characteristic of weak people or friendly people, if you will. They're so authentic that they draw people more and more to them. So these are just some insights in terms of how friendliness and weakness are usually seen as a problem in terms of sales and persuasion, but actually they have a lot of benefits. And I don't want you to be stopped if you have a high amount of these characteristics just because a random person says, oh, you need to be tough, you need to be very aggressive. No, you don't. There's benefits and there's drawbacks to every approach. And before you judge yourself or before you stop yourself, you should take into account the benefits of this approach as well. Because there are a lot of benefits. I'm still pretty friendly and I'm not aggressive at all in terms of my sales in everyday life, and I make more money than ever. Because that authenticity and that credibility, in many cases, they more than make up for the aggressiveness. So that's just something to take into account, okay? Friendliness and weakness even, they allow you to be more credible, they allow you to be more honest, and they allow you to obtain more information about the person, which you can then use to really create a tuned recommendation. So, something to take into account. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and check out the channel for more negotiation and persuasion topics, both in terms of this purpose and other purposes as well. Thank you so much for watching.